My brother came to me last night with this question. I had a hard time wrapping my head around it. My first thought is to leave, but I don't know. My guess is that most guys here will say leave, but is that really a well-thought-out answer? Be honest. Story 1. Personally, I wouldn't be able to get past it. For a start, she wouldn't be the person I thought she was. Finding out that you have been deceived for 20 years is a massive pile of trouble, no matter which way you slice it. It would be one of those things where the saying, "it was years or a long time ago," would make no difference. I don't ask for much, but honesty, loyalty, and fidelity are pretty much front and center. Not being able to trust someone would be pretty much game over for me. Story 2. Okay, so I actually know of a few people something like this has happened to, both men and women, and all I know is that it's all very situational. The harsh truth here, which I think most people will avoid, is that this is something a lot of people will choose to work through or forgive. It's easy when you're not in the situation to say, "Nah, bro, she cheated. Of course I'm leaving." But if this is a situation where you've been with someone for over 20 years, the revelation is actually less damaging to your lifestyle than a potential divorce and settlement. Here's the crux of it. This is someone you've also presumably been good with since that affair happened. The affair and knowing about it is, of course, damaging and painful, but if everything has been great since then and you've been happy and fulfilled, then for a lot of people it's going to make sense to stay. That doesn't mean, of course, that it shouldn't be worked out and addressed, and maybe in that process the relationship degrades and it's now worth ending. But there are two ways to look at it, and both are completely valid. She lied to you for 20 years, or she's been great to you for 20 years since. This isn't really a gendered thing either. Plenty of men have obviously cheated, and maybe men and women would present or receive this information differently, but the situation itself is pretty universal. Really, I think it comes down to how someone chooses to digest this kind of revelation. If you see it as a betrayal that taints the entire relationship since then, of course, it makes sense to end it. If you see it as a mistake that was made and then continually made up for, then I would understand someone choosing to stay and work it out. The only wrong answer here, to me, is to forgive without doing any more work. Maybe that works for some people, though, as well. But I'd imagine that comes from a place of guilt as well. Maybe they had their own affair, so it's easy to forgive, or they honestly just don't care, and they're happy enough in their life that an old affair isn't really shaking their foundation that much. I think a lot of men, if you haven't had much of a relationship, don't understand the nature of a relationship that long. Not only have you been through a lot together, good and bad, but you've probably seen friends and family on both sides have affairs, divorce, or just generally be terrible to each other. When you've been through presumably half or more of your life together, there are bound to be things in there that would end the relationship if the relationship itself weren't so important to you. That connection and that bond, even though it's been frayed and flawed sometimes, might just be one of the only things that can really anchor your life. And even if you find out they cheated decades ago, it might be worth keeping around. Again, I get why people will also just in large numbers say to end the relationship, and I don't disagree at all. I just wouldn't blame someone if their 20-plus year relationship transcends the opinions of online strangers. Story 3. Were we married 20 years ago? Then I would file for divorce. Even if we weren't, it's the kind of lack of character that would make me completely lose respect for the person, and then the relationship is over, so divorce anyway. Story 4. 20 years ago, we had just met. The bond we have today is a direct result of the days and nights spent in the early part of our relationship. Everything was built on that. Knowing that she lied during those years would be the end. Story 5. I would be surprised because I'm 32, so that would mean she married me and was cheating while being 12. Stupid jokes aside, I would leave. Not because of the affair, but because I couldn't get the idea of what else is she hiding out of my head. Story 6. Having been cheated on, it can't break me anymore. Been there, done that. Trauma can't be the same as the first time, as you'll have the experience to deal with it, and it isn't such a bad life-ending thing. I'll be a bit more like women who've been cheated on, in the sense that I will slowly pull away my attention and affection, and my love for her won't be the same way anymore. But it doesn't mean I won't stay in the marriage. I probably would if there are still tangible benefits such as lifestyle compatibility and access to her finances. I can probably find another partner, but it's such a hassle and harder to start rebuilding again. Time and energy I'd rather devote to my own mission in life. So I'd live with it provided she isn't repeating it now. Modern women treat marriage like a business, it's time men do too. Story 7. It's easy to give a straightforward answer when it's a random question. For people who have had a life for over 20 years, it's much more complex. I don't believe that once a cheater, always a cheater. There are plenty of examples either way. It's a complicated scenario and would really depend on how things have been for 20 years. Marriage counseling would be scheduled. Not the clever or snappy answer you want, but it really would depend on a lot of factors. Story 8. Once had a girlfriend who admitted to cheating on me over a year in the past. I was mad but got over it. Turned out it was not over a year ago, wasn't even a week ago. She just lied about the timeline, figuring I would forgive her if it was a long time ago. Story 9. I've been with my wife for 10 years. It really depends on the length of the marriage and when the affair occurred. It also depends on the length of the affair and why it ended. If my wife said, "I cheated on you 10 years ago," it would be less impactful than if we'd been together for 15 years and she cheated on me 10 years ago. If we were going through a rough patch or something, it at least would make sense. I don't think things are as black and white as people think they are. There's nuance. There are so many questions I'd need to know about the specific relationship. I'd probably go to individual and couples therapy before anything else, and I'd ask for a temporary separation while we figure it out. Story 10. Depends on what the last 20 years have been like. I have been with my wife for 20 years, and if she told me she cheated on me in week 6, it wouldn't negate the other 19 years and 46 weeks we've had that have been amazing. People mess up. If it was once and it's been over in the time since, yes, it's well under the bridge at this point. I'd be hurt, and we'd have to do work. But I'm not tossing my life for that. Story 11. It would depend on a whole lot of factors. Did I find out from my wife, and does she know that I know? Why did she tell me now? How was our relationship 20 years ago? How is our relationship today? After hearing the news, can I honestly say that I still love her? After hearing the news, can I honestly say that I can rebuild trust? Is she willing to put in the work to repair the relationship? Leaving would not be automatic for me. I would evaluate the overall relationship. People are human. My wife has been there for me through many tough times, a rock that kept us both moving forward and upwards. She has so much credit on the positive side of the scales in our relationship. I owe her a lot of opportunity to see if we can move past the historical issue. Story 12. I've only been with my wife for 10 years, and this is a difficult question to answer. I don't think the people answering actually have experience being married. Anyone who's been with someone for 20 years would know you're both different people from when you met. You've lost and gained friends. You raised your kids together. You've lived through the excitement and boredom of each other. You've helped each other a million times over. You could possibly have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in assets, and your families are intertwined. I'm not saying you would have no emotions and move on with your life, but uprooting your life for a 20-year-old mistake isn't the easiest decision. The only people who would be quick to say divorce are those who've been looking for a reason to be divorced and were too scared to pull the trigger. Story 13. Hot take here. If you cheated on your husband 20 years ago, and it was a mistake, and you've been completely faithful since, you aren't doing your husband a favor by telling him. All you are doing is making yourself feel better. If you want a healthy relationship, you need to just stay silent and feel guilty. Nothing you say is going to make lying for 20 years okay. You're just better off not saying anything and loving him like he's the best thing on earth because you didn't treat him right 20 years ago. Story 14. In case of an affair, leave. In case of 20 years of lies, leave. This is a double run for your life. One thing is that trust, once broken, is broken forever. The other is that women who get away with this will never respect the man again. So either way, he loses. Story 15. It depends a lot. How did I find out? Did she tell me for the purely selfish reason of wanting to relieve herself of guilt? Or did I happen to find out by chance? Does it seem she wants out of the relationship but wants to play victim by making it look like it was my choice? Also, who else knows? Has my wife told all her friends and made me look like a fool for the last 20 years? Or was this a secret she kept to herself all that time? And then who else is going to be affected by this? Do we have young kids? Can I afford to break up with her? Is she offering to just let me have the kids and the house? Anyway, lots to talk about, but not outright dismissal. Story 16. For me, it is not the end of the world. Hurt? Absolutely, and we would absolutely dive into possibly other lying, etc. But this isn't an automatic leave. Also, if you have to leave, then leave. But violence or threat of it is never acceptable. I am very curious about all the men who instantly call this unforgivable. Are you married? For 8 to 10 years at least? Or is your answer all hypothetical? My answer comes from experience. Have you ever cheated? Would you agree that it is unforgivable when you or your friend does it? Story 17. I've given a lot of thought to this. My wife and I have been married for 18 years. We had some rough years, especially the first decade or so with young kids. We separated at 14 years for a weekend, but decided then to work on ourselves individually and together. The relationship we have now compared to the first 15 years is completely different. We were younger, less mature people. We fought dirty and hurt each other a lot with what we said. I always had to cut deeper with my words. I realized the depth of the pain I caused her through counseling. I'm not faced with the decision, thankfully, but if I were, I might consider things for a very long time before making a final decision. My wife is an amazing woman, a great mom, friend, and companion. I could go on for a long time, but I'll sum it up with my username, which is true. I just don't know if I'd want to try again and maybe get someone who's half as great as she is over something that happened in the past when we were vastly different people. I mean, I'd be upset with my wife back then, and the pain of the betrayal would hurt, no telling how bad. It would really depend on the type of betrayal as well and who it was, but I could imagine scenarios where we might move past it. Story 18. As someone who unfortunately just had a guy confess to me that he's been having an affair with his lifelong best friend's wife, who is also his soon-to-be ex-wife's best friend, for years, you have to remember the incredible manipulation and selfishness inherent in the character of the cheater. Never ends. Story 19. It would be hard for me to stay considering she has been lying to me for 2 decades. On top of that, there is no telling if it was a one-time thing either. Story 20. I would stay unless there were strong signs it had been continuing. People do change. She might have done it once and felt so guilty. She learned her lesson. Coming clean at this point seems selfish though. Live with your guilt. Chances are the confession will end things, and for what? Story 21. The biggest question to ask yourself would be, has she changed as a person since that happened? If not, your best bet is to walk away as soon as possible. If she has changed, then she learned from her mistake and has grown as a person. Stick around and see what happens if you want at that point. Story 22. Nope. I am instantly gone. I have zero tolerance for cheaters, and I do not care about the circumstances. I trusted you. I did all I could for you, and what you pay me in return is betrayal and dishonesty. Who knows what other things she could have kept secret from me that she does not want me to know that could give me more of a reason to dump you. Story 23. For your information, you are asking a group of teenagers and young people in their 20s about what they would do if something happened 20 years ago. I guarantee you that over 90% of the people responding in this thread have no idea what they are talking about, have never been married, nor had a family of their own, much less done so for 20 years. As a result, you are just going to get the same mindless advice of dump her, separate the family, and hit the gym as though you were breaking up a college relationship. Even as a man in his 30s, I feel incapable of giving you a proper response. I just want you to know the context for over 90% of the responses you are seeing. Story 24. For me, I cannot stand cheating. My view is, if you're not happy, sort the situation out before you move on. But a devil's advocate view could well be, she thought she might like a new car, went for a test drive but decided that she didn't like the new car and kept her daily driver for the next 20 years. Has she become faithful in the preceding 20 years? Hard to tell. Are there any other affairs yet to be uncovered? Unknown. Might there be more in the future? Unknown. But so much of our future is unknown. It's hard to decide how to treat behavior that happened 2 decades ago. Story 25. Find out why. Why did it start? Why did it end? Don't impulsively throw away a 20-year-plus marriage, especially if there are kids, even grown kids. Her cousin did this, and now his future has been destroyed. He'll never recover financially, and now he's cut off from his kids and grandkids. Story 26. My guess is that most guys here will say leave, but is that really a well-thought-out answer? For most, no. Many Reddit users hold very black and white views, and it's generally hard to get a real thought-out answer from people who don't know anything specific about the situation. There are a lot of variables here. How did he find out? Did she volunteer the information, or was she caught? What exactly did the affair constitute? What was their relationship like at the time? How has the relationship been since, etc.? If a friend came to me with this, my honest advice would be to book several meetings with a therapist, both individual and couples therapy. This needs to be deeply explored in a healthy and productive manner before any decisions are made, whether the decision is to leave or forgive.